First, I wish to address something before I begin to embark on my journey here by fixing an error that was caused when I was born by demons wanting to show signs to the world that my time to be born in the flesh of man was coming. They possessed many people, caused much chaos, but the greatest damage done I feel was to the faith of the world by science when they tested the Shroud of Turin for authenticity. I believe it as if the presence of God is within it. Anything could possess supernatural powers if God wills it to. For example, when Moses was tasked to free the Hebrews from Egypt, God told him to pick up a random walking stick that was empowered by God to be more powerful in magic than the entire Pharaoh's court of sorcerers combined. So if the Shroud of Turin is blessed with their presence of God, then yes, I believe it does, regardless of whether scientific evidence says it's authentic, because that is really pointless technically.
We are the denizens of the dark, cloaked in blackest shadow. We are the fallen angels, soaring through ebon skies upon ravens' wings. We are the wolves that prowl the midnight hours to prey upon the harmless. We are the descendants of the dragon's blood, the keepers of the ancient flame. We are the chosen ones, who dare to explore the mysteries of the unseen realms. We are legion, for we are many. And united, we cannot be vanquished.
Now let me see. To pull this off, I am going to need to go back into the cultures of the Hittites just before the time of Moses to earn their favor and then bestow them the divine task of sailing into the lands of Egypt and into the Red Sea to ensure they arrive with their barbarian armada just in time to rush Moses and the Hebrews to safety on board their vessels and lead an assault on the armies of Ramses to help cover their escape across the sea to the other side that will be far from the erupting volcano further south from them that was the cause of the 10 plagues of Egypt. This plan shall make the chosen people of God, there, Hebrews and Moses, chosen to be saved from the poisonous ash cloud and the further effects on the environment and them if they should stay. The Hittite armada shall arrive and take them across the sea to safety as the pollutants in the air will be filtered by the sea water's condensation, thus making the region they are traveling towards the promised land that whisks them from certain death and delivers them to a land that will not be affected by this volcanic event. Explain to them what had happened and what they were delivered from and about the fight to come one day against the Red Dragon, and the details of this is outlined in their culture, and then they must return to their homeland under their cover of fog so that no repercussions from this follow them to their homeland. Their specific instructions will be given to them in the form of a religion that has obvious overtones that align to the Creator's beliefs and views of religions, as I shall point out here. Ishara is a goddess of the oath. Lists of divine witnesses to treaties seem to represent the Hittite pantheon most clearly, though some well-attested gods are inexplicably missing. His consort is the Hattic solar deity. Now this will be the cover of Moses and the Hebrews that they will go down into Egypt to find and bring them up out of bondage for. The volcanic eruption that caused the plagues shall be interpreted to them as the loss of the fertility in the land and his return to Egypt after the volcanic effects have left the land, since he is a descendant of the line of the Pharaoh, and bring fertility back to the lands of Egypt as Akhenaten, the forgotten Pharaoh. Now in his absence much suffering and famine and disease will have set over Egypt while he was gone. Now along the journey back to Egypt there is a chance that Moses may end up dying. If this does come to pass, Aaron, his brother, must take his place. They look the same when they get older, only Moses was younger. If Aaron takes the ashes from the campfires and not rub it but let the ash and dust coat his beard instead, it will give it a white appearance. This is only for a time that Aaron shall do this, enough to re-establish the civilization of the line of the Pharaoh back into Egypt by rebuilding the kingdom after the volcano that caused the 10 plagues has subsided. Moses and the Hebrews will have been unaffected and the effects will not have left permanent damage to their bodies, allowing their descendants to be born free of these things. This is what they are chosen for, not just for Israel but to save all of Egypt from disappearing into the sands from whence they came. In the Talipinu myth, the disappearance of Talipinu, god of agriculture and fertility, causes all fertility to fail, both plant and animal. This results in devastation and despair among gods and humans alike. In order to stop the havoc and devastation, the gods seek Talipinu but fail to find him. Only a bee sent by the goddess Hannah finds Talipinu, and stings him in order to wake him up. However, this infuriates Talipinu further and he diverts their flow of rivers and shatters the houses. In the end, the goddess Kamruzba uses healing and magic to calm Talipinu, after which he returns home and restores the vegetation and fertility. In other references, it is a mortal priest who prays for all of Talipinu's anger to be sent to bronze containers in the underworld, from which nothing escapes. Many of the Hittite myths involve a full cast of characters, usually because the problem has widespread effects, so everyone gets involved. Usually, the solution can only be found by working together to overcome the issue, although these are less wholesome ethical stories and more action-based epics with an ensemble cast. Another myth reflecting this style of plot is the slaying of the dragon. This myth was recited during New Year rituals, which were performed to ensure agricultural prosperity in the coming year. The myth centers around the serpent, or dragon, that represents the forces of evil and defeats the storm god in a fight. The goddess Inara comes up with a plan to trick and kill the serpent, and enlists a human, Hupasiya, to help. Hupasiya is, of course, reluctant to assist without some kind of incentive, so he gets Inara to sleep with him before they carry out her scheme. Inara then invites the serpent over and they have a feast, getting so drunk that Hupasiya is able to tie the serpent up. The storm god then steps in and slays the serpent himself. Much like in the Talipinu myth, a human was used to help the gods in their plots, which further emphasizes the familiar relationship between mortal and divine. There, mortal doesn't have much of a role in the story, but his presence is a help rather than hindrance. It also highlights the roles that goddesses play, within myth and in life. The powerful gods provoke a fight or do something else to create the central issue of each myth, and then the goddesses clean up after them and solve everything with intellect. Unfortunately, despite their helpful interference, nature cannot return to its status quo until the god completes the final step before normality sets in. He must wake up and resume his duties, or kill the beast, or some other action that proves his power is beyond all others. An understanding of Ishtar's powers and history was essential to the development of rituals and incantations invoking her. Subtle changes like this were also made possible with her absorption, close association of other goddesses, namely Anzili, as well as Soaska and Justinana. With the personality traits of multiple other goddesses, Ishtar's power grew, as did her popularity. One innovative way that she was utilized was in purification rituals such as Alayacharahi's, in which her affinity for the underworld was exploited and interpreted in a way that benefited the reader and cast her as a protector, rather than a victim, as in Mesopotamian myth. Ishtar's relationship with the underworld also made her a valuable chthonic deity, especially when her other affinities for war, sexuality, and magic were considered. The combination of these characteristics greatly increased her influence, as the fertility of the earth was one of the most fundamental priorities for the Hittites. The Hittites even recognized that she was fairly prominent in other cultures and created a ritual which treats her as an international goddess. The differences between outsider deities like Ishtar were respected, even though she had been appropriated for Hittite usage. First, I must list things that we can and cannot do while we are across time. We cannot be seen by the normal man's eyes. Those who are dreaming can see us, those that are in the twilight of death can see us, and those whose minds have been altered by the inhalation of oils and incense can see us. We only can act within events that highlight obvious markers of our personality traits and beliefs that we each personally hold to be true and uphold. These are only markers that are signs of events we can involve ourselves in but must check further to be sure, and we cannot act outside the guidelines of the event. Such as if it is said so-and-so deity appeared and brought to them the wisdom of agriculture and explained the seasonal cycles that would bring fertility, then the tools we have to work with are based on sowing crop fields and astrological knowledge that allows them to count their measures of a month or a year and the purpose behind it. Under no circumstance can we change the events set to happen, even if it is for the good of the many. For it will endanger the safety of all things, and all things lead up to us in the moment we are in. So to pull this off, what we shall do is bring to the Hittites the identity of Tlaipinu and the basic plan I listed above. I went to find there the universal essence that is Metatron being, through which God works and is a vessel of His. God did not seem so enthusiastic about the journey. Metatron told me it was because he believed I would fail in my task and was suspicious of me trying to manipulate him with this chance I was giving him. I tried to assure him I had no other ulterior agendas and my intent was made obvious, but, being their father of lies is a hard rep to beat, conveniently might I add. So I projected out of body and began to, well, the best depiction would be to compare an ant flying around a person when describing my spiritual avatar flying around the universal consciousness, but I eventually annoyed him enough that he swatted at me and missed. Again and again he tried until he projected into his own avatar state. As he chased after me, I explained in between ducking and dodging him the key factors in being able to move so quickly. Variances in condensing my spiritual presence that uses the same principle of being able to move objects when haunting someone, but applying a 5D perspective of height, volume, width, length and density to the spiritual form in rapid succession. And if you know the basic fundamentals of avian flight and how the wings basically utilize those same fundamental aspects to take flight while they maintain and maneuver while in flight, then you can achieve this in spiritual form. I'm not sure if Metatron had ever encountered another like himself that just simply defied all previous encounters and thus made me seem unique like himself. It was then he realized I wasn't antagonizing him, I was teaching him. I showed him how even in a spiritual form, we can project into another spiritual form, like a Russian nesting doll. Okay, that analogy is getting worn out. Maybe I'll use, like stepping out of a circus clown car. Wait, no, that just isn't right, plus it's not even funny. Once they had it all down, I stopped in front of Metatron's form and asked him if he was ready. God nodded and I reached out to take hold of his intangible state that I had come to understand him by and blipped out of sight. Across the fabrics of light along the spectrum of time's reflection, he and I raced looking for the shimmer of Moses' reflection etched into the light of existence. We reach his era and blip into the void of empty space. Earth is not in the same place it was when we projected from it. I explained as we descended back towards the Earth as it was in 1634 BC, locking on to the event of the volcanic eruption that caused the 10 plagues of Egypt to occur. I explained as we approached. The 10 plagues was caused by this volcano. I pointed towards the billow of smoke rising at the bottom of the Red Sea. But we cannot travel the Nile, for you are there in Egypt now with Moses trying to warn them of the coming disasters. You'll eventually give up trying to warn them openly and just focus on getting the Hebrews out. I'm currently to the north on my way with the Hittites' armada that will rendezvous with Moses and the Hebrews just before the Pharaoh enters from the valley with his army. Moses will sail away with the Hebrews just as the Pharaoh reaches the shoreline. This is where we come in. You and I need to create a storm before they arrive. The winds and rain will blind the Pharaoh's sight from being able to spot long-range objects, so he will not see the Hittites' armada until he reaches the shoreline. The Hittites will replace the Hebrews on the beach and ambush the Pharaoh's army. God explained that he never did like that man, he was very arrogant. I said, well, not to worry because today is the day he dies. God said, well, I didn't dislike him that much. And I replied, well, either way he is fated to die this day, so it is written. After they have laid down his army, I will instruct the Hittite chief to go to the town here on the edge of the Red Sea and tell him to give to one of the most responsible fishermen he can spot with his eyes the schematics on how to use tree sap to seal and build ships that can sail long distances in water as payment for the town's silence on what occurred that day, as well as tell them to gather all the bodies of the dead soldiers and place them on board one of the ships and smooth over the sands with something that will cover the footprints that would show signs of a battle occurring. Take the boat somewhere safe and away from being discovered and get rid of it. No one must know they were there, and stand by the tale that Moses had parted the seas through the power of two mighty angels that commanded the very storms themselves, and the Pharaoh's army chased after them, and the ocean swallowed the Pharaoh's and his army once they reached the other side safely. Then what looked like a giant of a man walked up and gave me this parchment and said to warn any who try to follow after them into the promised land of their people, then they would meet the same fate as Ramses' armies. And then they left into the storm that had come from the seas. There in the lands they are really led to, they must stay for 40 years before returning to Egypt, to the lands they once dwelled in, as payment for allowing them to build a city within their lands and give them the time they need to remain safe during those 40 years. The Hebrews must understand that one day in a land not too far from where they were then, there shall come a time when a plague shall fall over the entire world and will found to come from the rodents that steal the food they find at night. This plague that they infect man with shall leave piles of dead bodies as it quickly sweeps over the world. In this tragic time to come, that will be known as the Black Plague, the Hebrews will promise to send their healers and medicines that can be spared to help ease your people and tend to the sick. The Egyptian and Hebrew knowledge of herbs and medicines will be vital to both the survival of their culture and the eventual cure will be made to end the disease. This knowledge of things to come must be kept as the highest of secrets from those not involved and never fully revealed until all the events have come to pass. For this help I bring to them all, they must also swear to assist in defeating the Red Dragon one day, whose armies will wage a war on all the kingdoms at a time when the earth is at its weakest point. The Red Dragon's war will threaten to end all life on the earth, and we shall join the dust just as the kingdom of those who came before us had happened to them. They must be stopped, but we need more help, which is why the Creator of all things and I, his greatest and most powerful angel he has ever made or will make, have come to spare your people from destruction in hopes that you will honor this agreement. Both cultures. And this is the basic design of how you can do this and succeed. We could try and fail, but it is your people who will try and succeed. This design is mentioned in the legend of the Storm God. To protect the true plan I shall leave it as that legend and say however your ancestors in the days of the Red Dragon envision this legend's true way of happening will be the method of success. Only together as a people can this legend be made as a plan that will be the plan that will succeed. It must be done this way so that the armies of the dragon do not discover its truth. But for now let us return to the tale as it unfolds. I had brought Jesus to that era, but I had fallen asleep part of the way through and my Nephilim power needed recharging. As soon as I awoke I felt the drain and turned on the music I had, imbued with the awakening spell of the Nephilim. Revitalized I burst from the generating beams of light that enveloped me while my energy built up strength, and like a rocket I soared back through the folds of light, picking up the projected state of Jesus from when I lost consciousness and said, "Go home, John, get some sleep." I took Jesus' avatar and set him on the cliffside where muttered something in Hebrew as God's projected state tried to communicate with him, but there was a missing link to bridge the communication. Jesus could see him but could not hear what he was saying. God turned to me and asked, "But how can this be?" I stated, "Because though you are him in mortal form, that form's energy pattern is different than what you are now, just as both of you do not affect me directly, as I am a prophet of yours and thus come from your being, but I am not directly derived from your entire being, so thus being around you only awakens dormant memories of moments from your existence embedded within my life force. It makes things difficult, especially hearing stories of Christ's life, as it causes memories and emotions to become stirred up, such as what I know to have been there last emotions of his life he felt before he died, which inspired me to design this plan involving you in the first place. That is why I said I know. I shall convey to him your message as I send him back into his time. We should be cautious though. Satan is watching and he will, of course, try to adapt this for his own use. If you remember, he tried to do the same thing with the girl in her dream, when he was trying to escape from being sealed into the lost city. As the projection of Jesus and I crossed back into 14 AD, I explained to him that the one he saw though with me was his father and I was a messenger of his father. He said to tell you he loves you very much and that he wanted to bring you a warning. Be cautious of your pupils, for one will betray you that will lead to your death, but he is not the true enemy. Your uncle, Herod, was deceived by the same order of Pharisee that has corrupted your pupil and will eventually lead to your death soon. And I let go of Jesus to awaken in his time, which was on the journey towards the city of Gethsemane. It had bothered him greatly, and before the Last Supper a messenger, Matthias, had brought word of the same thing I had said to him in the dream. That is why he stated that he knew there was a betrayer in their midst but did not press the issue, for he also knew that those who were truly behind this he could not reach. During that time I was known by the name of Bacchus. He had called for my assistance and had heard of this boy but did not know him then as I do now. It was I he went to speak to in the garden. For some reason he had believed I was some ally of his father's and asked if I would bring him the means in which to rise from his execution, for his betrayal was to be complete as soon as he left from our conversation. I was perplexed then and didn't understand what or why he would ask me of such things, but I told him I would check on it. I was not there for the full trial that occurred, but I was there in the crowd, hidden, walking along with him until he collapsed, where they tried beating him awake, then picked him up and dragged him to his place on Golgotha. I have heard a possible reason as to why they placed the thorns on his head. It was to symbolize his heritage to the Nephilim, shaming his name before his people for being a sorcerer at that time, which signified he was of the forbidden bloodline of the fallen angels. If you'll notice in the statue of Moses, on his head is what they say are beams of light that look like horns. This image is also portrayed by Enoch when he described the children of the fallen angels. They say the Romans would do this in their executions to destroy the reputation of someone as a part of their execution methods. To pull off this plan next I must go further back to about 1800 AD to dwell in the midst of the Hittites and establish these prophecy first through their dreams, then the process sealing ships with a mixture of pine sap and fish oils. This will be 180 years before Moses and the eruption, so there will be plenty of time for them to build an armada for this plan.